welcome to the Real Alaska podcast. This is our 33rd episode, Billy.
Yep, and then first one in this.
Yeah, new season of the podcast. We're doing a relaunch with our new studio, so you're like number one.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah, so let's do a quick introduction. Tell us about who you are. You want to go left, right? That's some finger pointing.
Chris, you go first.
Okay, my name is Crystal. I'm actually the director of operations for all of Henning. I oversee every single project that we have going on right now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And my name is Alexis Johnson. I'm the director of strategy and growth for Henning Incorporated.
Awesome. Well, what do you guys do?
So we originally started out in homelessness services, and my background prior to public service was I owned and operated a restaurant. My background's in startups and entrepreneurship, and then I went and left to go work for the former administration, doing just a lot of public policy, and I really fell in love with homelessness, and that's how I got introduced to Henning Incorporated. Henning is an incredible asset to the community because they really just say yes all the time, and I say this in every public space, is that every time I had the craziest idea, it was never like, oh no, we can't try that. Henning was always the group to say, yes, let's try it and see if it works.
Very cool.
And so I was with the mayor's office doing homelessness, and then when Mayor Bronson vacated the seat and the new administration came in, I felt it was only right for me to go continue to do good work on the nonprofit side. So I'm forward thinking for Henning Inc. and where we go from here, and Crystal basically is the magician that makes it all happen.
Awesome. Yeah, and you guys just got that new building, old Marx Brothers, which is super exciting. So welcome, neighbors, onto 3rd Avenue.
Yeah, downtown's really hurting, I think. I think it has been for a long while. How do we get young people into downtown? How do we get people living in downtown? How do we activate the space? And I think it really takes young people to say, we're not giving up on this city, and we see a vision for downtown. I know right now it's a little bit rough, but we hope that our presence and, our opportunities that we provide really just redevelop downtown and reignite the energy that I think Anchorage has.
No, I agree. I find that there's definitely some people that are born and raised here that want to see kind of Anchorage go back to more of its glory days. Mm-hmm. They remember what downtown used to be. It's a little bit of ways from that what it used to be, but it'd be nice to get it back there. So, I mean, I've been doing a lot of investment in downtown, like this building and such, but, and I know there's some good momentum for downtown right now, with all the different projects that are going on. So hopefully that brings a little bit of lifeblood, but it's nice to see, nonprofit sector, also want to change things a little bit.
Well, and it is changing, right? Like Marx Brothers has been around a really long time. That was a classic. I'm sure a lot of folks are disappointed to see them go, right? Some people are like, well, I didn't know that was there.
Yeah.
They missed out. But it's good to see new energy go into the space, I think.
Yeah, I'll let you talk more about your vision for the upstairs of Marx Brothers, and then we could talk downstairs.
So I know Alaska is very niche-y, so we don't have any Cambodian food here. And we also don't have any high-end, Asian food where you could get a good cut of meat served at your table on a hot plate. So my family is Cambodian. They're refugees from the Cambodian War. So we'll tell that story all in, opening in the restaurant. I grew up in a restaurant also my whole entire life. My family has owned restaurants and grocery stores, so I kind of just want to relive my grandparents' legacy, open up a nice restaurant, a hip restaurant, a good restaurant where there's good quality food, something new to downtown, and also a place where we can support our clients to start learning how to cook, how to come to work, how to wash a dish, how to save a paycheck, and become
tax-paying citizens.
Yes,
go back to the workforce.
Right.
Yeah.
And we hear that a lot. I mean, I will tell you, we sit in meetings and boardrooms, and we listen to the community, and everyone's like, they just need to get a job. Well, it's really hard when you don't really have the life skills or knowledge to do that. A lot of people haven't graduated. They have addictions. And so
unstable environments for sure.
Yeah.
Makes it hard to be consistent.
You can't do anything without stabilizing first. And I think we have an opportunity right now with kind of the developments that we've started. And, you know, our founder, Sean, has just been incredible in the vision and supporting our vision. And basically what we have is we run a shelter for the city. We just got the contract for the non-congregate shelter. We run the low-income housing for the city at the former Golden Lion. We just bought the Henry House downtown, and so we're doing a lot of partnerships with DOC, Department of Corrections, for people who are exiting incarceration and need to get back into stabilization rather than falling back into the streets. We have partnerships with API where they release people who are stabilized off their psych meds, and we take them in, make sure they're taking their meds, et cetera. And we've really kind of created this pipeline where people have us as a support mechanism through the stabilization process to go from congregate to non-congregate to low-income housing to transitional to low-income housing. And now we're ready to get them back to work.
Right.
And so now we have this great opportunity to help aid the workforce, which everyone in town, every restaurant in town is cutting their hours, cutting their days, help wanted signs in the window. And we have people that are really ready to work. They're excited to work. They get up every day. How can I help? And it's just really a community saying, like, we're not throwing away these people just because they have prior convictions or felonies or, drug addictions in their past. I think normally people will just be like, oh, I checked their background and, they had a theft from 10 years ago. I'm not willing to take a risk on them. Yeah. But I think if we come to the table and we say, look, I can vouch for this person. They're clean. They're keeping their bunks clean. They're coming to do cleaning every day. Like, they're really turning a corner in their life. I think us vouching for them really shows a lot to put our name on the line. And I'll give a little bit of backstory about Henning Inc. and Crystal can tell her story. But Henning Inc. we're not a top-heavy organization. Our leadership team doesn't make a ton of money. That's pretty different from a lot of the nonprofits in town. I think another thing that's really special about Henning is that the leadership core all have lived experience, whether that's through homelessness, long-term recovery from substance abuse or alcoholism, lived on the streets, or former incarceration. And so all the people who are leading this team are people who most of the time wouldn't have an opportunity in society because people will write them off. And so when you start to walk alongside people who are in this kind of lifestyle right now, just got out of jail, have drug addictions, mental health problems, and you say, dude, I've been there. Look at me. We're buying restaurants. We're developing downtown. Like, we're making moves happen. We're hustling on the good side of things.
Right.
People are really more likely to be like, damn, if they can do it, I can do it.
Right.
Let's
it's validating. Go. It's like the follow me approach, right? And it's nice because it seems like you guys have the systems to kind of support them throughout that. And that was part of my question is because I think I had originally read about the project on like Facebook. I think you might have posted it. And I had just reading through that and I was like, I have so many questions about how they plan to do, because like it's, like you said, it's being stable and having good habits and doing that, that's a whole nother portion of it. So it's very ambitious. I was like, okay, I'd be curious to hear what your plan is for all that stuff,
Yeah, absolutely. And you can go into your personal story a little bit if you want to.
If you want to share it.
It's fine.
So only like maybe a few hundred people are going to listen to this, so it's okay.
Well, I thought it was good because I read it and I was like, well, that's emotional. I mean, people are going to be
connected.
It just be good. It will resonate with people, I think, and then this would be a good platform, I think, to kind of put out your story, so that way there's no misinformation, right? And so people can have like the true vision of what it actually is.
Right.
So I am a person who is in long-term recovery. I am actually just completed my probation. I did a long state term and I did a federal prison stint, so I did 11 years total in prison. I came out, Sean actually hired me at the shelter, and I was just shelter support, and I was just hustling, bustling. I'm like, I can't go back to where I just came from. I just missed out of 10 years of my kid's life, overcame heroin addiction, overcame prison incarceration, went back twice. It took me 2 times on learning, and Sean kind of just gave me free reign. She said, hey, you figure it out. Figure out what works for you. See how you can work this program into fitting your sobriety, your healthiness, and your growth. And I'm going to support you through that as long as you're sober, healthy, and doing the right thing. So I kind of created that. I got moved to be a case manager, and I case managed 80 people and into a transitional living. All of those 80 people, aside from 2, they all now pay their own rent. They have their own jobs. A lot of them work for us still, and they're all sober. So just by me walking alongside them, sharing my story, being vulnerable, which I hate being. That's like the worst place on earth for me to be. I'm probably red right now. It gave them a little bit of hope. And most of our team is like that, aside from Alexis, but she's actually one of us. She just never got caught.
Stop. You can cut that out in post-production.
That's too funny.
Crystal. But yeah, so this model of, I think the quote is like rising tides rise all boats.
Right.
And I think it's really important that Anchorage as a whole, right now there's a lot of dramatics with homelessness. People are tired of it. They're exhausted. Their small businesses are getting broken into.
Yeah.
And obviously that is a component of homelessness. I'm not going to say that it's not. Not all of our clients are great people, but they're deep in their addictions. They're deep in behavioral health problems. And we've seen people who are not so nice people turn into incredible people, hardworking people. It just really takes a lot of persistence and people breaking through their guard and just being like, this is not a life you have to live forever.
Right.
And I think being homeless, a lot of the times people just give up on them. It's like you see them on the corner, you don't want to look at them, you don't want to engage with them, you're afraid of them. And they start to act out in a sense of like, if you're not going to look at me or you're not going to see me, I'm going to make you see me.
Right.
And so when we take the approach of like, we see you, we're willing to put in the work as long as you are, you really start to see them thrive. And we have, 90 employees right now. I would say 70% of them are formerly homeless, formerly addicts in long-term recovery, and they're thriving. And it's just because someone took a chance on them.
Well, they have the most to gain, and it's interesting when you set goals for people and hold them accountable, what they can accomplish.
And I think accountability, and I talk about this often, is like non-existent. When you talk in homelessness, it's like we take a soft approach to everything and we really infantilize like homeless people and we try to treat them like children. But the second you call them on things, like, we ain't doing that today.
Right.
Like, nuh-uh. Like, get out of the streets, get back in the shelter, stop messing with that dude. Like, they're like, okay, like, and they'll do it. And it's crazy. And the next day they're like, I'm so sorry. You're right. I'm in recovery. I've been clean for 4 days. I messed up. I'm sorry. And we're like, okay, start over. Like, we're here. We're not throwing you away. Like, we're not leaving.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important part is a lot of times there's no accountability. And we call it compassionate accountability where we're doing it because we love you, because we want you to succeed. And a lot of times people in their life have not had that. They haven't had someone who loves them, who walks alongside of them, who cares for them deeply, regardless of, the actions that are occurring at the time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think as a society, we have lost our compassionate nature for somebody sleeping on the side of the street. When I go to Las Vegas and there's just somebody who is just laying there, just at least look and see if they're breathing. And Anchorage has now done that too, where there's somebody in the middle of the road and nobody will stop. They will literally drive around. So you got to be that first person who stops, and then as you stop, you'll see other cars stop.
Well, it's interesting because it's reflective of how people view that, right? So it's almost like like a road cone or like something like inanimate almost.
Yeah.
That's not a good look.
And it's also how people feel about the shelter. We tell people to come all the time to the shelter because they're surprised. Because when they come into the shelter, they'll see the clients eating together, playing cards together, cleaning their bunks, a lot of the time smoking outside, hanging out. But it is like calm and peaceful. And at 2 a.m., I could walk around in the dark and know that I'm going to be okay. So I think that a lot of people have this scary fear that homeless people are all bad. But a lot of the times they're just lost and cold and
unloved.
hungry and unloved. And we invite people to come hang out for 2 hours and see the difference of the person who is breaking into your house and the person that's in the shelter. So,
Yeah. I did police and fire service for 15 years here in Anchorage, so it's
Thank you for your service.
it was we work a lot with the homeless communities because you're now in one service so you get called for everything, right? And for a long time there was definitely like a gap in services. So like there would be a service to get them to this point, and then there'd be a gap or just no communication between services, and so then you get the circle again. Back from just being picked up to the local hospital, back to the shelter, someplace else, picked up by EMS again, and so we saw it often. So it's nice to see, like, trying to complete the full circle, to get them from point A all the way to point Z, right?
And we talk about this a lot, and I go back to the thing of, like, Henning always said yes. There would be so many times, in public service, you're really bound by red tape. You're really bound by process and code.
Yeah.
And homelessness doesn't care about it. Like, people are in crisis at 2 o'clock in the morning. Municipal government is completely shut down aside from police and fire.
Right.
So I'd get calls 2 o'clock in the morning. I have a girl that's been assaulted and I don't know where to take her. I can't take her back to camp. She's, manic. And I would just call up the team and be like, what do I do? Like, I need help. And they'd be like, we'll send someone down there. And they know the person. It's like, oh, that's, Teresa. We'll get her in the car. We'll take her somewhere. She's going to be fine for the night. We'll deal with it in the morning. And really just that component of, like, removing someone from the situation and really caring for them, even in the middle of the night, it just changes the course of someone's life completely versus, like, we'll send them back to camp, or I'm not answering my phone. It's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I think that component is really, really important because just like you said, there's a lot of gaps in services. And anytime I felt that there was a gap in a service, I just called Henning and said, what do I do? And they were like, oh, we got it. Because a majority of the people who lead the entity or, like, our nonprofit have been in that exact situation where it's 2 o'clock in the morning. They don't know who to call. They don't know where to go. And they're like, I'm not going to repeat what I've experienced, and so we're just going to show up and we're going to handle it. And I love that. People who show up and handle the business, regardless of if it's in homelessness or real estate or development, it's like you love when people come to the table and say, I got it, I'm going to handle it, and you're just like, hell yeah, this is exactly what we need.
Doers, man.
Yeah, doers.
Need more doers.
And in government, it's everybody's talking. It's just talkers, meeting. And it's like, let's just do something. Let's try something, and if we fail, at least we did it,
Well, it's implementation gap, right? So everybody has really great ideas, but then when it comes time to do, there's a...
We call the government the really good idea machine because we sit in meetings and work sessions, and it's just talk.
Rooms with some of the smartest people, you have great ideas, but then when it comes to putting wheels to the road,
and 13 studies later,
you got to do the work.
Millions of dollars in studies for this $30,000 project.
The government loves to study stuff, and I'm like, I don't need a study. Just come down to the shelter for like 1 hour, and you'll be schooled up real quick.
But we gotta know.
Yeah.
And then that study expires, so we have to have another study.
So down at the shelter, I mean, Reverb. And for everyone listening, Reverb kind of came about because we had so many people at the shelter being like, we want to go to work. And we were like, what do we do? Like, do I just call all my friends and be like, hey, you need some landscapers?
That's how it starts, but then after a certain point.
And so, of course, I called, I sold out of my restaurant in 2023, but I called the owner and I said, hey, like, are you looking for kitchen help? And I told him about Reverb and what we wanted to do. And he was like, yeah, whenever you guys get people who are skilled up, of course, like we're ready to buy into the program. We would love to have people who are ready to go in a kitchen, who I don't have to sort through Indeed and do all these background checks and hope they come to work. It's like, they know that Henning's going to be like, yo, it's 9 o'clock. Like, you got to get to work in half an hour. Like, the car's ready to go. Get in the car. You're ready to go.
Yeah.
And, people will say, oh, well, that's babysitting. But after 3 or 4 or 5 days of us being like, it's time to go, they're up out of their bed ready to go before us. And we're like, they're waiting in the parking lot like, where you at?
Yeah.
And so we offer day labor at the shelter for cleaning up city parks and trails. we have a community council. I won't tell you which community council, but they pay day labor hours. So it's like $12 an hour for a team of 6 to come out and clean up the community. It's getting people out of the shelter. It's getting people working again. They're making a wage.
Right.
$12 an hour isn't life changing, but it's more money than they had the day before.
Something.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah, and we've really changed the mindset. I mean, when you get paid day labor wage, it's like, hey, we'll pay you that day. Well, we're like, hey, can we pay you at the end of the week? And you get a full week's worth of pay, and then you'll see like a bulk of your money in cash. And they're like, oh yeah, I'll wait till the end of the week. And so you start to see the mindset change of like fast cash, which a lot of people on the street deal with, is like, cash in, cash out, to this, oh, I'm ready to earn a paycheck. And so that's what we call tier 1 or tier 0. And then tier 1 is essentially us putting them into the kitchen to say, let's start training you. And our founder, Sean, she really cares for children. She cares for hungry kids. She was a hungry kid in her life. And so that's how she wants to start giving back to the community. And so our plan through Reverb under the Marx Brothers kitchen is to create food boxes for kids in Fairview and in Mountain View.
Very cool.
So they're learning how to cook. Our clients are learning how to cook. Businesses are investing into Reverb, essentially feeding young kids who are, going Friday, Saturday, Sunday without meals.
Right.
And so you're really kind of creating this community development where our people are getting trained, businesses are receiving trained employees at the end of this, and kids are getting fed. I mean, there's really no loss for a community. And I think that's really important to have, because we don't see that really in our community right now. We just hope that they show up to Home Depot and get
We don't see that level of planning and execution in our community. And
What's crazy is we had the meeting on Thursday. We came together, we got a plan, we put them to work that next Monday. And they worked the entire week, and we're on week 2 now, and it has doubled. But our van is 6 people, passenger van, so our team can only take 6 people out. So these guys are like well behaved. They're like, we're next, please put us on the next team. And we're like, this is amazing. And it's not any kind of special kind of work. They're just going in.
Do you think the limited seats added to the exclusivity to that?
I actually had this thought where it's like, you stand outside a club and it's like exclusive, like I want to be in that club. I'm going to wait in line. I'm going to pay whatever. I wondered that, but I think it's just people are bored. I mean, have you ever had a day off where you don't do anything and you're like, man, I got to get.
I was like, only when I'm sick.
Yeah. Well, I took a break between public policy and going to work for Henning, and I swear to you, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I gotta
stir crazy.
Yeah, and it's like, what do they say? Idle hands or the devil's workshop. Yeah, and it's like, that's exactly what's happening in shelter. It's like people lay in their bunks all day, and I know they're bored.
Right.
We know they're bored. And then they're like, well, I should go out and go hang out with my friends. Well, their friends are doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. Right. And then it's like, well, I got to get money and I got to, hustle. And we're trying to get them out of that hustle lifestyle on the negative side of things. Let's put you in the hustle lifestyle on the other side of things, because it's very rewarding.
Right.
Henning employees work 80 hours a week. They love it. They want to come to work. Their friends are there. Their clients are there. It's a very rewarding it's just meaningful work. And I think when you put people and you give people hope and you give people a purpose, even if it's cleaning up parks and trails and, cutting up salads for food boxes for kids, it's like they have a purpose, they have a team, there's camaraderie. I think that's very important.
Well, and then too, as the program builds a reputation, that will stand for something. It's a resume point for them to go and be like, hey, now I have something to build on, right? And it shows, like, if after a little while, the reputation will speak for itself. And it's like, hey, I know these guys have good life skills. I know they have stable housing. I know they're going to show up on time. And I think that's a really important piece of it too. So like,
well, and we hold everyone accountable. It's like, you're getting up. You told us you wanted to work today. I know it's 8:00 in the morning and 11:00 p.m. last night, doesn't want to wake up 8:00 this morning, but it's time to get up. Yeah. And that accountability piece lacks a lot in a lot of entities. It's always client choice. And I think sometimes when you start to motivate people, they'll make that client choice a few days down the road, but it just takes someone to be like, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just about to say that, because that was definitely one of the things. And I, I can see the taxpayer side of things too, because, the community just likes to push more money into homelessness, but not really accountable on the outcomes of it, right? And so it's every year they see the budget just go up and up and up and up, and you're like, oh my God, especially like COVID, 20, 30, $50 million, you're like, what, I mean, you know, but the outcome, but then you don't see like a set, you know,
any kind of back end accountability. So like if you were a small business and you had a marketing budget,
right.
Would you measure your outcomes and reassign how you're spending your marketing budget? You probably would.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
You should be measuring that stuff. And so I would think.
You just want to see if the price, you know, more dollars, you want to see a difference, right? And so if you're seeing an increase of homelessness on the streets versus a decrease with
that means our
2 to 3x the budget,
place.
you're like, okay, you know. And like you said, I think it was just a lack of accountability for services, you know.
And also, we need a lot of people to not just speak on that on Facebook and to family members and to friends. We need to like show up. We need to vote. We need to be at the meetings. You need to. A lot of people like to complain and do nothing else about it. It's like my daughter. She complains when I ask her to clean her room, but I'm like, but if you clean your room, I won't complain.
Right.
So there's there's a reciprocal circle that we can fill this need. Let's figure this out as a community, as a whole. Obviously, the city can't solve the problem, but the city can be held accountable. We just need everybody to do it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, government solution for stuff isn't always typically the best, you know.
Well, it comes down to the human element, I think. Having that compassion for people, I think, and then remembering that we're small too, I think. Like driving around people like they're a fixture, like that's not a good look as a community.
Yeah.
We should probably take a step back and be like, hey, you know, who are we as a community and how did we get here?
Yeah.
And be a little bit more humble, be even more grateful.
I agree.
And I feel like Alaska has always been that way. It's like you see someone on the side of the road with a flat tire, you get out of your car, and I feel like that's gone away.
When
and
did that shift?
The culture shifted a lot.
Maybe
Last, like,
COVID?
decade.
We were just talking about that because, like, when I was a kid, like, so now if you go to public parks and places, there's like trash. Like, I don't remember it being like that because, like, we would, you know, we were young kids in Alaska and we would go out and then we would leave no evidence behind.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Oh, yeah.
you know, like you pick up after yourself, you know, that kind of stuff, and like that is not the flavor right now.
Well, and I don't think kids are as social as we were. I mean, everybody's communicating online or on Roblox or Minecraft or whatever, but they're not getting outside. And I think it's a two-part thing. I think technology advancements and then also the fact that you have helicopter parents. Like, depending on where you live in town, like I would not let my kids outside.
Yeah.
And we got gun violence going on right now. We got rampant drugs. Like my kid's safe inside playing on whatever platform, safer there than he is playing down at a park.
Yeah.
And so something has to change culturally where we're like shoving our kids outside and being like, don't come home till the streetlights are on, like what we lived. And it's like riding bikes and like all that stuff. And you just don't see that anymore. And I think that's another thing that's really adding that I worry to our population is like you have these kids that are just so isolated and they're not engaging with their friends. And then they get wrapped up in something like they're not hopeful. They just feel isolated. And so they're like, oh, I'm going to self-medicate or I'm going to try this drug that someone at high school or the high school showed me. And then they just fall into our system. And we want to stop that. We want to like stop the inflow of people. And I really think it starts with our kids and really like making sure that they understand, like, we even talk about it now, like the drugs that our friends were taking in high school before homecoming, like, my nephew's 15 and I'm like, don't ever try a drug in this town. You like,
it's all changed.
It's all changed.
Yeah.
It's not recreational anymore. Like they are getting you guys hooked on them and they're either trying to kill you or they're trying to get you hooked for life. And so don't even try it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just really this cultural shift with youth and there's no space for kids anymore. Like where do kids hang out now?
I don't know.
Good question.
That's a good question.
My son's 9, so I'm like, we're not quite there
They
yet.
hang out online, you know, and so it's interesting because we're not teaching them to navigate risk early on, and then later on they get forced into adult situations and then have no idea to handle it because you lost the opportunity to let them navigate danger with support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's,
We always joke about this because, like, when you're 15, I mean, I'm not going to air out, my life, but when you're 15, you're riding in the back of a car with someone you barely know. You're going to
Yeah.
a field to go party or whatever. But
Right.
those experiences don't happen anymore. Parents have Ring cameras. They're like,
Oh yeah.
you're not sneaking out anymore. There's no
cell phone.
Everything
Yeah.
is video.
Like-
Everybody has a phone.
Yeah. Right.
Everything is documented.
And
they
kids
don't-
are afraid to say things or do things because it changes their course of their life forever. And I think it's unfortunate that that's the situation that we're in, but we're just trying to navigate so that we don't have youth coming in. And right now we have so many kids falling into homelessness, 18, 19, 20, 21, showing up at the shelter, had an issue with their parents at 15, 16, started getting hooked on drugs, and now they're with us. And
Right.
if you think about it, we're in our third generation of homelessness. We have grandparents living with grandchildren out in homeless camps. 3 generations of trauma, and we continue
Right.
the cycle. So we have to figure out how to really breach that and find new ways for kids to have healthy activities and outlets and really experience risk. Because I think risk is important in your adult life. Taking risk in business, taking risk in, going into restaurants or opening new startups. It's really, I don't think kids are there anymore, and really trying to ignite that spirit. So I don't know, maybe our next move is an incubator for youth, trying new ideas, something like that, a space for kids.
Yeah, especially like the high school ages, right? Like you have options.
And there's a gap in mentorship.
Very impressionable age too.
Right.
Yeah, so our board member, she runs the We Need a Strong project, and she is creating something. She works with the troubled kids, and 18 to 24 years old. She's in the school. She's talking. She's trying to change. So I think she might be somebody that you guys could have a conversation with about the kids that are going through the things that they're going through today.
And so Erica's on our board. She runs a foundation called the Juanita Strong Foundation. She lost her daughter to gun violence in 2017. Her daughter was a bystander. She wasn't actually involved in the conflict, but it was based off of jealousy, high school jealousy and relationships. And so, a 15-year-old and he's 19, I think now, but they got into a jealous kind of situation over a girl and ended up shooting up a party bus. And her daughter was the only one who got shot. And so from
sad.
that moment on, she said, there's a lot of kids that are hurting. We're not recognizing it, whether, parents are just working too much or they're uninvolved. But she's really focusing and honing in on how do we break the cycle of like youth, who are in trouble and don't know how to let out their emotions.
Right.
Besides gun violence. So, yeah, she's doing great. She's doing incredible things.
Yeah, I just, I feel like culturally people just don't really talk as much.
Yeah.
Like, people aren't as communicative, so they don't really have an outlet.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because all they do is social media or
Yeah.
Snapchat or whatever. They don't really have like the dynamic of like actual personal face-to-face
And you see
how
that
to handle
in marketing.
confrontation. 100%.
Like all your marketing is social media.
Yeah.
It's electronic podcast. I mean, we're doing a podcast.
Right.
It's on social media. It's these ads. It's Instagram. And really going away with the face-to-face interaction. When people knock on my door, I'm not answering it.
But think how wild that shift is, though. Now, like, for entertainment, you're listening to, like, murder podcasts and whatever.
Yeah. We call it misery porn. And it's like we have so many great stories to tell of, like, revitalization, development, good things that are happening, recovery. And it's almost like you have to beg people to tell the story.
Right.
But then you're like, 13 people got killed crossing the street. We got to run that story so many times. It's like if we as a culture decide to start like really incentivizing the goodness of our community, I think more people will start to be optimistic about the community that we live in versus right now where everyone's like, Anchorage is awful and it's going to hell in a handbasket and it's overrun.
All the time, and that's just that's how you feel and you act towards it, right? So you're right about that.
Yeah, bad news sells and good news doesn't get
And we get it so fast and so much of it that it,
Doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. And I don't know, I mean, I'm guilty of it too, just sitting there, just taking in content, sadness,
randomness.
depression.
Yeah.
I mean, worldwide, I think it's really important to kind of break out of that and really focus on the goodness that's happening, because there's a lot of good things happening.
It's just a mindset shift, and I think it's an easy thing to say, and then, but like you said, it takes everybody to kind of participate.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys ever want to borrow the studio to do some storytelling on like
Hey.
homelessness, success, and all that,
Yeah.
feel free.
I just think when you take people out of the like homelessness box and you really start to say like, this is your future entrepreneur. This is your, I mean, Crystal is like the prime example of like, you have a person who was incarcerated in federal prison for 11 years. 11 years, got out and was like, I have a choice to make.
Yeah.
I can go down this road or I can go down this road. And by the grace of God, Crystal's like, I'm ready to change my life.
Yeah.
And
That's amazing.
look
by
at
the
her.
way.
COO,
Yeah.
running homeless shelters, housing projects, opening a new kitchen, a workforce development program. We just bought Henry House downtown, which, you know, is going to be a mixed use of transitional rapid rehousing and then shelter for winter. And all these things are happening simultaneously, and Crystal's got it.
Yeah.
And so we really have to change the community narrative of like quit throwing away people and really just invest in their talents and what they're good at, and really just like envelop that.
Yeah.
And it's just because Henning gave me a chance.
Good.
And it's
great.
really I would really want you guys to like come to one of our manager meetings and see the passion of every single manager's heart, because we don't have to ask them to show up. They show up. We don't have to ask for overtime. If somebody calls out, the managers are just there. They don't even tell us. Like, their hearts have changed completely from the street life to normalcy, grown shit. That's
You can cuss.
Yeah.
It's okay.
They're doing their grown shit now, and it's just an amazing thing to see. Even for myself, like my family is like, it's only been 2 years, Crystal, and there's just a complete change of heart, you know. But that person wasn't who I was ever.
Right.
I was just engulfed in nonsense.
How do you
Just
think
the
streets.
How do you think it's
Yeah.
affecting your children, I think, to see you make such a switch?
So my children, my eldest one, he's it's a little bit new for him. So I have a 22-year-old, a 11-year-old, and a 12-year-old. So my 11-year-old and 12-year-old, they kind of didn't know I was taken away, and their dad kind of protected them from that. They kind of do know the story, but my daughter, anytime that she can be at the shelter, she's helping at the shelter. And if she sees somebody hungry, she's feeding people, and her heart is just completely different. Because of the person that I think I am today. Thank you, Jesus, that I am not that person who taught my daughter how to be a drug addict, because that definitely could have been the story for my children. My son, which thank you, Jesus, for this too, it completely turned him off from the streets. He's like, I don't want guns on the street. I hate drugs. I hate alcohol. I hate clubs. I hate anything bad. I'm never going to jail. And I'm like, you know, like I literally am thanking Jesus, because it could have been where I taught my kid, and it was me and my kids in a tent, you know, doing drugs together. Because that
Instead, you
definitely
taught
is
them to pick it all up and shine. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
And they individually, like all three of her kids are just like incredible. Her oldest is super helpful. He manages the Golden Lion facility.
That's
and
awesome.
He's like got an entrepreneurial spirit, and he's like, where do we go next? Like, how do I hustle from here? Like saving up money.
You bought a house at
You bought a
22.
house at 22.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
See, these are the right things to teach them. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
showing them like, hey, this is what is out there, but that's not who you have to be. And you can also help somebody out of that position. So a lot of the times when I'm like, hey, it's time to evict them, he's like, wait, we're going to give them 10 more chances, Mom. I'm like, well, anyways, he gives them the 10 chances, and they end up turning all the way back around. And I'm like, good job, son.
A lot of
You know,
grace.
lots and lots
A lot
of
of
grace.
grace. And I think as parents, I mean, you offer your kid a lot of grace. A lot of times you're just like, how could you do
Right.
that?
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same with our clients. Like, it's just a love that you can't, it's almost like a love you can't teach. It's just something that is like inherent in all of us. And it's just like, no matter how many times you mess up, we're going to continue to love you. We're going to continue to walk beside you. And I think that like component of it, they're willing to come to us and be like, dude, I fucked up. I
Right.
messed up. How do I go where do I go from here? And we're just like, well, start over, like pick it up.
Yeah. I mean, having that support system, let alone people that actually like legitimately, authentically care,
Yeah.
right, is super I mean, I would say a lot of people don't have that. Not just people that are experiencing homelessness or addiction or whatever, but just in general as a society. I mean,
missing that as a society.
100%. Yeah. So I think having that, and like I said, just having a place where you can kind of come full circle and you don't have the breaks.
And I think mine's spiritual. I think, like, you know, I'm a faith-based person. I believe in the life and teaching of Jesus, and I want to live a life that's similar to his and just have a servant heart. And I think when you really have that mindset shift of like, I'm not doing this for a paycheck. I'm doing it because I want a community that I want my kids to grow up in. You know, as a parent, I have an undying fear of like, am I leaving my kids with like this horrible community? Are they going to be able to afford a house? Am I going to be able to put my kids through college or trade school or whatever?
Yeah.
And so the work that I think we're doing now really sets up my kids or your kids or your kids for the future of like their legacy. What do they get to live in? Because I don't want them living in a San Francisco. I don't want them living in a Portland.
No.
You know, stepping over needles to get to school. I don't want that.
No.
So whatever I got to do to stop that, we're going to.
Yeah. I think it's like a full effort too. Like it's just not just curing homelessness, not even curing homelessness, but just making sure that people have a safe place to go. And then that whole like acuity of care, right? That takes them all the way through to be able to get a job, all that stuff. But on top of it is, you know, having a collective of people that are kind of our age, right? That are like motivated to get Anchorage back to a place because, it's building Anchorage back up again, right?
And I think
business-wise, et cetera. Because we got to bring people back,
Yeah.
and make Anchorage that bright, shining
say
star
it, but
again.
I kind of view this as the bottom.
Well, and I mean, rock bottom's a great place to build a foundation, and we say that all the
100%.
time. So
Yep.
my thing is like, if we can make Anchorage a place where young people want to come back and live decades of their life, we just really have to figure out how to become that niche community. And I think they have those in the lower 48. I visit Nashville all the time, and Nashville's really had this like big boom of young people.
Yep.
And it's more than just a music town now. It's really just a community, and there's a lot of cool stuff to do and places to be. And I think Anchorage has that opportunity because we have a lot of cool places to be within 45 minutes of Anchorage. And there's big lots and big trees and big wildlife, and it's just really a cool place to be. We just need to really incentivize young people.
It's opportunities, and I think doing kind of what you're doing creates those kind of opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Both in leadership and then ancillary services and all these other things that are involved.
Yeah. I'm excited about, turning the Marx Brothers into a restaurant. I think any restaurant in Anchorage is good for business. I think young people, I mean, we'll pay our mortgage and we'll pay our electric bill, and then we're going out to eat. Like, I feel like we have really cool restaurants and really niche restaurants here. And I think Crystal's right. There's really not like a high-end like Asian cuisine place here. And I'm really excited because I've been at her house a million times eating dinner. I'm lucky I don't have to pay for it. So, but yeah, really just bringing that to fruition. And, my background's in restaurants and startups. And so really just bringing that business spirit, meeting with her kick-ass food. I mean, it's incredible. And then bringing a workforce that we care about, that we love, that we're going to hold accountable is just really how you create a community, at least in my opinion.
It's a huge, I was thinking about that because it's a huge asset. You're training all these folks and then they can go on to do other things. And it's a good rock bottom plan.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is like we hear all the time, like help wanted, we need help. Like we're closing on Mondays or we're shutting our hours down. And really, if I could just call up, a restaurant owner and be like, I got 3 dudes, they're ready to go, they're trained up, they're clean, they're sober. I know where they live. Like we're gonna get them there. I think it really, that relationship of being like, oh, Alexis called and she's got the people, like, bring them on over.
Yeah.
It's like a trust thing versus Jeremy, who's coming in, who just got out of prison, showing up to the restaurant, filling out an application, and them looking and saying, oh, his address is at the homeless shelter. I don't want to deal with that. I think that whole culture shift of just being like, no, I can vouch for this guy, and like community leaders vouching for homeless people, I think is like, holy cow, this is how you make a culture shift happen.
Right. Part of that too is also if they really appreciate what you're doing because you guys care so much, and then they go to work and they know if they screw up that it's going to go back to you guys, right? And then they're going to disappoint you, right? So there's like this whole like, not like a pure accountability, right? Just because like, oh my gosh, it's like disappointing mom and dad, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh
So
my
if you show up for them, they're going to want to show up for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. And so, if you didn't have that support system and it was just you showing up to work, you wouldn't have that like internal, like, I really don't want to disappoint these people that put a lot of faith and like at work into me, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you guys have that too. Yeah.
We see that. I mean,
Which is
they
awesome.
want to go to work for us. And it's almost like they're like, well, I have a chance at leadership in Henning. And like Danny, for instance, our shelter manager over at CWS, his story's incredible. Got out of incarceration and, just drug running, doing drugs, dealing on the streets, and went to prison, came out, and somebody had called us and said, my cousin got out of jail. He kind of needs a chance. Can you, offer janitorial and so he came down to the Sullivan Arena when we were managing Sullivan Arena. I think he thought he was going to like run security for a concert. And he shows up and he's like, I know all these people. Like, I'm about to go work for a nonprofit to go like work with people that I used to run with. And I swear to you, it was like a light turned on in his brain. Like he was like, how do I advance? How do I promote? How do I get here? And now he manages a 200-person facility.
That's
I don't
awesome.
even worry about him. Like we check in once a day. How's everything going? Great, cool. Like it's almost like when you put your effort and your love into someone, they thrive. It's like watering a plant.
Yeah.
And Danny he's been watered and he is thriving. He's incredible. And I could say that for everyone in leadership. I mean, they've all just had an opportunity and a chance. And I think even outside of homelessness or incarceration or recovery, it's like, if I take a chance on you, or, you guys have mentors in your life, like who mentored you and took a chance on you where you're like, that's who I want to be, or that's my legacy, or I want to work hard for that person.
It was actually a friend of my dad's. Interesting enough, that was in business and always has done really successful. But he was always the person that was getting other people jobs. So I was like, I should
The
probably
networker.
ask. Yeah, and so I was like, who do you, that kind of thing. I think it's important to have at least one person like that.
Absolutely.
in life,
And I think Sean has been that for me, our founder. Her life story is incredible. But she's always just said yes. Like, I'm like, I want to go back to grad school. Like, do you think it's worth it? And she's like, yes, go. Sign up. And I did. I signed up. I'm in grad school right now. Crystal came in and was like, I want to open a restaurant. Sean's like, yeah, let's do it. How do we get our people in? How do we get people working? And it's just really people saying like, yes, you can do it. Yes, I believe in you. Yes, I have faith. And once that seed is watered, it's like, we take off.
Yeah.
We take off.
Screen light.
It's go time. And even I'm like texting her at 3:00 in the morning, like, I have this idea. Like, I want to open a coffee shop. And
That sounds familiar.
I'm like, yes, let's add rolled ice cream.
so we went
Billy
to
at
we went
4
to
a.m.
Mountain View Community Council, and he was like, yeah, Mountain View doesn't have a coffee shop, and I really want to see that come to life, because Mountain View has kind of been like left alone,
Mountain View is a great opportunity.
And this is what we talk
Yes.
about, where it's like, this is the bottom. It's like Mountain View needs love. And those kids in that neighborhood need love, or they're going to end up being our people. And so to me, I'm like, well, let's start now. Let's open a coffee shop. Let's get the work done. So I'm like literally 5:00 in the morning on the phone with investors. Like, what do you think about a coffee shop? I'll use our our clients to staff it up. We'll put 4 condos upstairs. We'll put 2 people in the room. And it's like, I'm trying to sell this vision at 5:00 in the morning. And that's just really how you do it. It's like, I just need people to take a chance on us.
Right.
Because I swear to you, we're going to do the work. We're going to get it done.
Yeah.
We're not going to fail. And Henning's staff is like, they're hustlers. Because they've been hustlers on the street.
Yep.
Now they're ready to hustle for the good.
It correlates.
It does.
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, just
Hustle
because
culture.
Right.
It's the same drive. You can't teach that.
Yeah.
No, it's motivation. And homeless people are entrepreneurs. I'm telling you, they know how to run the streets. They know their network.
Yeah.
They know how to do it. If we could just channel that and
yeah.
use it for the goodness
Right.
of our community,
Obviously, it's working.
world domination.
There's a lot of interesting theories that surround that. Like you tend to see people that are hyper successful have the same attributes or character than the people that are hyper not successful.
Right.
And a lot of it comes down to like whatever, how they were nurtured.
Yeah.
Right. Or like what opportunities were given to them, or, someone told them they could be a certain, like, I didn't know it. Did you know that you could be an orthopedic surgeon when you were a kid? I didn't know about that job. I was like, man, someone could have told me that. I would have been making the big bucks.
Right.
What did you want to be when you were growing up?
I don't know. I think I wanted to be a soldier. I mean, my parents were in the military, and like after, like when I got done with school, that's what I did. I went to do that, and I got to travel the world and look at a bunch of different cultures and see kind of like behind the veil on some stuff, and then see large scale planning. And I think that provided me a lot of the opportunities that I have now.
Incredible.
But through some struggling and having to learn on your own, and I experienced some homelessness too when I was younger. I like got into it with my parents and moved out. I thought I knew everything, and then I had to basically like live on people's couches and in their backyards until I left for the Army, right? And so it was like that, having that short period of homelessness, and then going to the military and then seeing how other cultures are doing way more with less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay. I think that gave me some perspective.
Yeah.
And now I'm back home, and I want to bring all that stuff back, right? And it's like we see all these communities thriving, and it's like, what are we missing here? We have like the best backdrop, and there's like so many things to do. We have wild animals in town, and the unfortunate part, I think, is we're seeing trends in businesses is Alaska was the land of opportunity, and people did come here and do well. They did so well that they got their kids private educations and sent them other places.
Yeah.
And now all those kids are running businesses and raising their families in other states. And like, that's a significant problem for us now. And a lot of these business owners, they want to retire, but they can't. There's no one to take over their business. Right. They can't find the help that they need, right? Everybody's saying that they can't staff.
And they're closing instead of selling.
They're closing instead of selling, right? So maybe if we present some opportunities in that, and say, hey, there's a lot of businesses opportunities here for people that are willing to work hard and put in the time.
Yep.
And if we can show those stories, I think it will vibrate with people.
Absolutely. And I think housing is another issue. Housing plays a role with us, but it also plays a role with young people.
Everything.
Yeah. And so really just developing communities where people want to live in. I just continue to go back to Mountain View because I feel like there's so much to offer if we could clean up Mountain View a little bit. Yeah. And I think it takes the government. I think it takes nonprofits. I think it takes the community, really making that culture shift and saying, how do we reinvest in Mountain View without making it unaffordable for people to live there? And so I think my next move is, how do we open a coffee shop in Mountain View? Because there isn't one. There's not a place for people to hang out, and like they have to leave Mountain View.
Yeah.
Something with Wi-Fi, that kind of thing.
Yeah, just a hangout. Like young people right now, we're seeing with inflation and the cost of living, these programs for youth, Boys and Girls Club specifically, they're really shifting their programs, and they're making it unaffordable for people in these neighborhoods for their kids to go. And so we're trying to figure out from a community standpoint, like, how do we stop the inflow of homelessness? How do we stop the inflow of kids drug running, hanging out with gangs, hanging out with the wrong people, and kind of like ending this like black hole of just like criminal activity, and really like investing in our youth, because today's youth is tomorrow's clients. And we want to get ourselves out of homelessness. We want to be in housing. We want to be in community development. We want to start businesses and restaurants and really show recovery happens. Yep. This is what happens when you take people and give them a chance, and really just like watering our community and saying like, we're not going to let it languish. And I think Anchorage is so ripe for
super ripe
everything.
Yeah. I literally tell like the YPG group through the chamber this all the time. I'm like, Anchorage right now, if you're someone below, even early 40s and down, Anchorage is the prime spot to get into business. Absolutely. Because you have the doers of the 80s, right? 70s, 80s, early 90s, who are all want to retire, like Van, right? And they're ready, but there's not, maybe they didn't have kids or they did have kids, and a lot of children don't want to take up what their parents built, right? They want to build something for themselves, but they are typical, like pillar companies that are like have provided a niche service and have been in business for a long time, have a solid market share of what they do, but no one wants to buy the business or take over. And so I'm like, man, there's a plenty of opportunity.
And I think that has to do with risk. And we're not teaching our kids like risk aversion is like, should I just go buy this laundromat? I mean, laundromats aren't sexy. They're not like flashy. They're not a high-end Cambodian restaurant, but
laundry.
They're money making. They're niche. They're needed in the community, and they're going up for sale.
Right, all the
left
time.
and right, and really just like teaching our kids that yes, risk it all because you're so young. You have an opportunity to remake it over again. Yeah, like you're 25 years old. It's a pretty affordable company. This guy's willing to let it go. He's willing to close it.
Right.
So he's willing
take zero.
Take zero. And just really like teaching that risk of going into business. What happens if you fail, but what happens if you succeed?
And what I found is, because we deal with like commercial real estate and that stuff too, and it is these businesses have been around for so long. They've been doing the same thing for years, and they haven't really pivoted to 2024. Right?
Absolutely.
Like they have like a way to take electronic payments, right? But their website looks like it's from Netscape in the 90s, right? And they just haven't really had to make a transition because there's no competition, right? And I'm like, man, that's a prime opportunity for like a new person to come in, take over the business, bring it into 2024, offer online whatever, right? Maybe provide additional services. And then you take an already existing business that's already doing well, and then you just explode it, right? Because, I mean, they're making good money on doing the bare minimum for current, right? But the name has just been around for so long.
Yeah.
That's the name.
Name recognition.
Right? Yeah.
You have permanent clients.
Well, then, too, think about that. Let's say you've been a company for 40 years and you've been profitable and you have a whole tax record. How valuable is that to a new entrepreneur? Like, like you come into it and you're like, oh, well, you're saying that I could actually get a loan and do this brand flip. And, that's a better proposition than.
But I also don't think they teach that.
Nope.
Like you have to have someone in your life that's like got that entrepreneurial spirit or who has done it to be like, this is how you get it done. Because I can tell you, having young people in my life are like, are they going to loan me that money so I can go buy $1 million company? And it's like, oh, well, there's a bunch of steps, but we can get you there. You just have to have that connection. I think that connection is lacking a lot, especially with young people. I think young people right now are just like, oh, I got to go into corporate America. I got to go into government. I got to go into...
They got to go to college and they have to go in debt and they have to do it. And that's the only way.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's why we kind of put this podcast together. Because we were like, what do we want to do for podcasts? We're like, well, we run a real estate company. Like, maybe we should do some real estate. Then I'm like, there's like 1,000 real estate podcasts out there.
That's kind of boring. I already do that.
Yeah. And I was like, man, we're both entrepreneurs. We both like business. We both have businesses outside of just the real estate team. I'm like, who really kind of like promotes like growth and entrepreneurship and business in Anchorage? I was like, Chamber and SBDC, and that's it.
Well, and I can tell there's like a new energy happening because 100%. YPG has grown so significantly.
So much, yeah. That's an amazing group. So if you're listening
I agree.
And you're 40-ish and down,
I think
definitely join that group.
I think because it's you, I think.
Oh, I'm 40, man. I'm timed out.
They were like, well, Justin's
I'm 32. I'm a baby.
But
I plead the fifth.
But I think you see this young people shift of like, we're bored. We need something to do. We need to figure out new, exciting ways. And I think Alaska is like, the land of opportunity. And I think
100%.
if we just get young people motivated, I think we can convince a lot of people to move up here. There's a lot.
As frustrated as we get with the process for new business and like with permitting and all that.
Don't even get me started.
It's frustrating to get with that. You have to admit that the barriers here are much lower. So like if you're in Atlanta and you're driving down, you're like,
well, competition's way more.
Right?
Yeah, and so many people. And I think that's another thing is like we are so limited on population right now that your competition is minimal.
Minimal.
And if you can get in where you fit in and you find your niche, you could thrive. I mean, super successfully. And so just getting young people here, I think that does take government. I think it takes an exciting education system. Our university system's kind of right now. So hopefully that can be reinvigorated. Restaurants, cool things for people to do.
Yeah.
And we got to get the homelessness issue under control because people care about public safety. They care about raising their kids in safe neighborhoods. And so that's what we've committed to all the time. Neighborhoods call us
And
and
I think it's
say,
interesting. Those things go together.
oh, absolutely.
You know, and I think that's the broad scope of things. Is like it really does benefit us to have a trained workforce.
Yeah. Good
It benefits
education
people to
system
have
for our
options
kids.
for housing.
Yeah.
You know, when they may not have it, and it's good for people to have the public support when they need it.
Absolutely. We get calls from neighborhoods all the time like, hey, there is someone in crisis out here. We've called APD. You know, they basically said this guy's fine. The thing that happens a lot in homelessness is people will be in crisis until law enforcement shows up, and then they're like, I'll back down.
Yeah.
But they just want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be helped. And a lot of the time, police resources are so scarce
Limited.
that there really isn't an opportunity for help or for intervention aside from taking them somewhere.
Right.
And so we get calls all hours of the night. Hey, there's a guy out here. APD showed up. There's not much they can do. Can you guys come help? And we just get out and do it.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of culture shift as well is like neighborhoods feel that they can call us and we can help. And we're helping in safe streets and safe neighborhoods. And it really starts from that ground level of nonprofits and communities who care.
I mean, 911 service isn't, I mean, they're not really trained for that.
Yeah,
Right.
no.
And there's only so many things that they can do. Right.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is
they're
like,
for law enforcement. And
Yeah.
sometimes being in a hot mess situation, that's
Right.
not legal, you know?
Yeah,
Like, we've
yeah.
all been there, but
yeah. And,
that's
you know,
their thing.
and with AFD, like, you either, you know, like you just call ASP or you take them to a hospital.
Yeah.
Right. Or you wait for the cops.
it's not their role, but
Yeah,
it's become their
exactly.
pseudo role in our
100%,
community
yeah.
because nobody understands, like, who else to call.
And then a point of contention because the resources aren't being utilized the way they're supposed to.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, APD is dealing with homelessness more times
And I'm
than
sure
not.
it's if I had to guess, it's affecting both their and AFD's.
Oh, yeah. Both.
Attention.
All in one
Oh,
stuff
absolutely.
is
About that.
inundated with, yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
now they're having to incentivize people when they wouldn't have had to before, and like so that all kind of trickles down to.
And most of it is just, you know, not having a safe place to be, right? Or a shelter spot or a warm meal, right? And so typically it's, you know, they're out of medication. They don't have a warm place to go in the wintertime, right? And so they call you because they need a medication refill. They need a warm bed for a little bit, right? Or a hot meal. And so the only really resource they have, right, is 911. You know, and so
And that's
you become
a
a taxi
misuse
service.
Of, yeah, it's
you know?
a misuse of resources.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but if that's the only option they have.
Yeah, no.
And the only option they know of, then that's what they're going to use.
And we have 211 in the community, which is essentially like 911 for homeless, but it only works Monday through Friday, 9 to
Which,
4.
So
yeah,
sometimes
which is, I mean,
It's like, I will tell you, homelessness doesn't pop off until 4 o'clock.
no.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like it's like the witching hours. It's
Yeah.
like 7 p.m. to like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
That's when like the work is happening. And
100%.
community and the government doesn't operate like that. So the only people who are operating at that time, aside from Henning,
Right.
is 911.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because
It's cold. It's
Yeah.
dark. Everything's
yeah.
closed, right? So you can't go walk in the mall or whatever else to warm up for a little bit. Everything's quiet,
Yeah.
you know? And so, I mean, that's also when, like, you know, majority of the crime starts coming out and all
yeah.
that is at night, you know? So you're like, oh man, you know, where am I going to sleep for tonight? Where, you
they'd
know,
have some
where can I be safe? You know? And so that's what, I mean, we commonly got calls. It was like dinner time and after, right?
Yeah.
Of just cold, hungry, you know, need a safe place.
Yeah.
whatever.
And that should be our role. I mean, it should be the nonprofit's role to show up and really, because we understand it. We understand like what the experience is. I don't think it's a place for police or fire to have to, you know, use, and we are so limited. We're down 61 cops in the municipality right now, which is insane.
Go tier 4.
Hey, I'm all about Anchorage Police Department, Anchorage Fire Department. Like the work that they do is incredible, and it's like thankless oftentimes because they're dealing with a lot of our clients, and
they're carrying it home and.
Oh yeah, and our biggest thing is like, you know, we experience a lot of trauma in the work that we do. We lose clients. We're Narcanning our clients. And I can't imagine being in a situation where you signed up to enforce the law and you think you're, you know, going to go fight fires, and most of the time you're Narcanning
Right.
our clients. And so that's a tough thing. And I think it really is going to take a community effort to be like, we need to reorganize and figure out who does what best, and really kind of just make people compartmentalize like who's doing what and organize those services.
Accountability.
Accountability.
For their services, for sure.
Compassionate accountability.
And then making sure that, there's, like, you guys sound, from what you're talking about, it sounds like you guys have the full circle, like you close the loop, right? But just making sure that other organizations, are communicating, right? And like sharing, like, okay, now we have this person here. We need to move them here, right? Or I kick them out and now they're homeless again before they get the next service here. Right?
And that
now they're back.
break happens
all the time.
All the time. And I'll tell you why. It's because of scarcity of resources. Yep. People are afraid to let other people in. It's considered a competition, which unfortunately in homelessness is disgusting, that we have to compete about something. But you start to see that divide of like, there's only $1 million worth of funding. We're not going to work with you because we're going to keep all those resources. And we've never been that because a lot of the people in leadership have been without. Right. They've been in the situation where they're like, I just need someone to take a chance on me or to help me out, not because there's funding behind it, but because we care for them. And so that shift, I think, needs to happen as well. Because right now it's almost competitive, and we don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew more about that world besides
the underground.
Besides like the 911 service stuff. Yeah. But I'm happy you guys are, I'm glad you guys bought the Marx Brothers and are bringing. I mean, I have quite a few restaurant owner friends, and I mean, their main complaint is employment,
workforce, 100%.
Workforce, 100%, and it's not bartenders, it's not servers, it's all back of house, kitchen. Dishwashing, front of house, it's like someone to,
bus tables,
et cetera, right? And so it's, that's their main complaint. They're like, man, I could put like a dishwasher up for like $23 an hour, and I don't get anyone to apply. I'm
Absolutely.
like, what? $23 an hour to wash dishes?
People apply, with PhDs apply for the manager position, and nobody wants to work at that.
Yeah.
Well, and it's so crazy too. Like I just don't understand because the food is good and the money's there. It's just the workforce, and I think it really takes like us being like, it's time to get up, it's time to go to work. Like there's more to life than just laying in a bunk.
Well, and then too, it's like now you have people working downtown, so you have people walking downtown, utilizing other services, the other business, like you said, high seas, rise all ships.
Well, and activation of spaces. So I went to university. My undergrad is at Arizona State, and so Tempe is a college town. There's about 80,000 kids, like just milling around.
Right.
They have a massive homeless population on Mill Avenue, where all the kids are activating. And so you don't recognize homelessness because it's so activated with young people just doing stuff that you don't really even like notice the homelessness. Well, in Anchorage, nobody is downtown and it's overrun, and you notice every person you see is homeless. And if we could figure out how to get people downtown to activate the spaces, to utilize the park, I think there's a huge opportunity for people to live cohesively no matter where they are on the socioeconomic scale.
Yep.
And you really have that like psychological shift of like, this is just a community space for everyone versus, oh my gosh, our downtown is overrun with people experiencing
homelessness. And that's how it feels because that's the only people
that's all you see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know everyone's age in the room, but like, do you remember being downtown in Anchorage, I don't know, a decade ago where it was like, Platinum Jacks was popping off, like Rum Runners was popping off. People were taxiing to Coots. Like it was just a thriving downtown.
This might have been before your time, but the Anchor.
The Anchor.
Oh yeah, you're like that was like my spot, man. I love that place.
There for a while.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I thought you looked familiar. No, I'm just kidding.
But like young people just being downtown and like feeling safe to go out and like have fun and like see their friends on the street. And now it's like nobody's going downtown because it's overrun with a lot of people that are in the riffraff. And so I think just trying to figure out, I don't know if we're there yet, but trying to figure out the culture shift of like getting people out of that mentality. We can live cohesively.
Yeah, 100%.
Homeless people are not all bad people. They're really cool freaking people, and they have a lot of great ideas, and they have entrepreneurial spirits a lot, and this hustle culture that we just try to cultivate in the right direction, versus them like dealing on the streets and stuff. So you just got to be in the work to really like cultivate it, and I think that's what Henning tries to do all the time. It's just really
sounds like you guys are doing a great job too.
We're trying. So, we're up against a lot. So
all you can do is try and put the best foot forward, and
you got to risk it all. You got to risk
100%.
it to get the biscuit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're very intentional.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could say that we definitely won't place somebody where they're going to fail.
Yeah.
And we've built that relationship where they're comfortable enough to be like, I'm going to fail here. I need to get out.
And we see that in workforce too,
That's
where they're
awesome.
like, I can't work
That
8
they
hours
trust you
today.
enough to tell you that.
Yeah.
That means you've
yeah.
built a good relationship with them.
They'll say like,
So-
I can't go to work for 8 hours today. Like I could commit to 2. And I'm like, all right, 2, get in the car.
Two's
like,
good. Let's go.
Let's
Cool.
go. Tomorrow you're given 3.
It's better than 0.
It's better than 0. And
Yeah.
I think that mentality, especially in the world where everyone's like, you got to put in your grind. You got to work 18 hours a day, like
Yeah.
7
You just
days
gotta
a
show
week.
up and do what you can do.
Yeah. And as long as they know that they can come to us and be like, I can't give it all today. Like I'm at a 30%. We'll take it. We'll take it because every single time, eventually they're going to be 8-hour-a-day employees ready to go, self-sufficient. Because we've seen it. We have
Right.
people paying their own rents. They get their kids back, which is incredible to me.
Oh, I'm sure that's a really good feeling for them too.
Oh, it's like, you're taking kids out of a system that really is putting them on the trajectory of homelessness. Foster care kids are at the highest risk of going into homelessness. And if we can put them back with their children or like parents, it's an incredible feeling for us. It's an incredible feeling for their parents. And it gets them off a system and a path that they don't end up with us later in their life. And I think that's really rewarding. And so we have so many people who have been through the shelter system who are earning $35 an hour, $40 an hour, who are living in their own apartments, buying their own houses. And that is like never told in the media.
Yeah.
They won't publish that. We try to tell the story all the time. Like they're homeowners, they're entrepreneurs, they're starting their own businesses, and they are in long-term recovery. They got out of jail. Like nobody wants to hear that story, but it happens all the time, and it's really great.
I think it's a
love
story that
sharing
needs to be
those
shared.
stories. I love sharing. Those are my favorite.
Yeah.
It's like
100%, man.
because home ownership is a way to build wealth, right? We
Oh,
all know that.
absolutely.
And so it's like, but a lot of times there's an educational component, and people don't even realize how many resources they have. And then they sit and talk to me, and I'm like, yeah, you could do this, and you can use that, and whatever. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. Right? And it's just like having a conversation with someone and feeling that you trust them enough to just put those objections out there that might have been holding you back. Just work through them.
Just relationship building. I think that's all that community is just who you know, how you know,
Yeah.
the information that you are willing to tell. And I yap all the time. I'm a yapper, so I'll talk for hours on end. But yeah, just community. I think we're really rooted in community, and that's important. I think humans were built for community, and I think it's really important for our clients to feel that they have
100%.
that. Yeah.
Because of some of the things we talked about, with social media and the way people are distancing, and we're not, kids are not learning these interpersonal skills that we got on the playgrounds.
Yeah. They're breaking up over the internet.
Yeah.
Right?
People need the connection. Like,
Oh, absolutely. Human
humans,
connection.
I
Humans
feel like I
are.
used to do it with a note.
It's over.
That's a Hallmark card.
Check yes or no.
Okay. Well, do you guys have like an anticipated date of launch for the restaurant and
Crystal.
the lower restaurant?
So we're opening, I will tell you
Kitchen
for
only?
Henning, for homeless services, we're opening 500 new beds for winter. That starts October 21st. We are in a competitive process right now to keep our 200 beds at CWS. So we'll be launching 700 beds, and then we have the Golden Lion, which has 107 people that we're managing, and we're trying to figure out where to place those because the city wants to close that facility to open treatment. And then Henry House with our relationship with DOC. So we got a lot of moving parts for October and for winter.
A lot of moving parts.
But obviously Reverb is important for us in Crystal's launch. So I'll let her decide a date. And I'm going to hold her to it. I'm going to keep her accountable.
I don't know yet.
TBD.
Yeah.
TBD.
Soon. Very soon.
Soon. I want to do
I'm sure there's a lot of
New
moving
Year.
parts.
Yeah, I want to do New Year too.
Yeah, 2025 I think is the next big year of
So
growth for us.
anticipated
Yeah.
launch.
We're bringing cool stuff to downtown. I'm telling you.
Heck yeah, man. I'm here for it.
Yeah. We want to
So-
create new housing. We want to bring young people back downtown.
Me too.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this whole section of this building, this whole commercial storefront section has been vacant for a decade almost. So
What should we move in?
it's nice to...
What should we start up?
The Anchor.
Anchor 2.0. No,
Anchor.
we are not opening any alcoholic beverage.
Yeah. I don't think the condo association board will let me do that.
Yeah.
I know for a fact, but
Cool spaces. Cool
yeah.
spaces.
I'm super nervous about your restaurant because I'm a foodie and it's going to be really close, like a
Walking distance.
2-minute walk. So
Pop on over. Pop on
I
over.
would definitely do that.
Billy and I are like,
We'll deliver for free.
Yes.
We'll run
that's
it
even
down.
more dangerous. Well, I mean, normally we ask people 5 tips about entrepreneurial stuff, but I think because you guys are very unique, what are 5 things that you two would like to share that are kind of myths about homelessness?
Ooh.
Like that you want people to like kind of like
Debunk. the
debunk,
myth.
right? Like share, whether it's stats or just personal opinion or experience from just running with the Henning company, like nonprofit, like.
I think me personally, so you'll hear all the time, like, there's just people that want to camp outside. They just want to live outside. I don't think that's true, personally. I think that there's a lot of guards up, trauma, with people. But I think when you start to break it down, if everybody wants a space for themselves, and I can assure you it's not in a freezing cold tent in the middle of winter in Alaska with the wildlife and all the other people.
Stuff, yes.
So they can say, oh, I just want to live out here. I don't want authority. I don't think that's true. I think that people want a space. They just haven't gotten the opportunities or the relationships to feel comfortable inside. I also don't think all homeless people are bad. I think it's really easy to put everybody into a box and say, oh, they just need to go get a job. They just need to sober up. That's just not the case. I mean, we have a lot of clients that have traumatic brain injuries. They have the reading level of a second grader. They have the, articulation of a kindergartner. They can't communicate well. There's really no space for people like that in our community aside from like group homes. And group homes are paper heavy. You got to go through a process. You got to have guardians. And I think that oftentimes people just think that everyone is a chronic inebriate, drug addict who's just lazy. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we're oftentimes a makeshift API for people that are, experiencing behavioral health problems. And I think we take a lot of people who are children that are adults that have the mindset of a child that we have to care for because nobody else will. And those people can't just go get jobs.
Right.
I also think that a lot of people think that homelessness is an industry and there's a lot of money to be made. I can tell you, at least from our standpoint, like we don't do it for the money. I'll never do it for the money. I feel like we have servant hearts and we wake up every day and do it because we love our city and we love loving people.
Right.
And maybe that's my only 3, I would say, that are misconceptions.
That's pretty much on the head.
Yeah. I think 2 things for entrepreneurial stuff: take the risk. Always take the risk.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Take the risk. And then
Take risk, wear a helmet.
yeah, literally. Well, and another thing is like network. Everywhere you go, network.
Yeah.
Hey, you mind if I grab your phone number? I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah.
I'd love to take you out to
That's a
coffee
lost art.
for whatever.
It is.
Even if it's something you're not even interested in, just like spend half an hour with someone because I want to be, at least I think I want to be the person where someone's like, oh, I want to do this or I have a thought about this. And someone says, oh, call Alexis.
Yes.
Like, I want my phone to be ringing off the hook where people are calling me all the time and being like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And it's like, I want to be that asset. And I also want people to like offer opportunities to me because they know I'm the person that they can take a chance on.
Right.
So
I think you are that person already.
I try. That's what I want to be. So those are my 2 entrepreneurs tips. And then those are my 3 misconceptions about homelessness.
I love it.
Pop off, queen.
I got nothing to add. I would say take the risk and just show up.
Yeah. Do the work.
Basically, just
Yeah.
show up. A lot of the times they just show up and magic happens. So
Absolutely.
Love it. I would say that's a battle for a lot of people is just doing it. Right.
Showing up.
Yeah. Well, if people were wanting to refer potential clients or resources like investment, like what's a good spot for them to go to
Get in touch with
Yeah,
you?
you can visit us on our website, www.henninginc.org. You can donate to the cause. You can see our employment opportunities. You can see all our shelter sites, transitional housing, and all our upcoming projects, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, you can hit us up. We're everywhere. We want to be everywhere.
Yeah. Well, awesome. It was great having you guys on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes,
we love to
Yeah.
share our story.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.